Okay, so we just completed 3 game weeks since our last recording, which was 2 weeks ago. We got through our first midweek Premier League fixtures as well. And now we're recording for another 3 more fixtures coming up because we have a midweek fixture happening next week as well. This is the time we're starting to hear about all of these COVID outbreaks that are taking place as well. So we've spoken about this before. Make sure that you have a strong bench available. But a lot has happened over the last 3 weeks. We can see, the template is changing a little bit. There are new players that are in fashion now as well. And so, Greg, how has your 3 game weeks gone since we last spoke?
Hey, Clyde. Look, it's been. I haven't really made much progress. I think I've actually dropped slightly in rank, but I was hovering around the 1600 mark, and I think I'm on 1800 or 1900, somewhere around there as an overall rank.
Yeah, you got rich people's problems there with those ranks, but anyway.
So I've pretty much had pretty much flat, slightly up, slightly down, slightly up, and then
Yeah, so I got dusted 2 weeks in a row. Game week 13 and game week 14 were horrendous for me. I went from like the early 200,000s right down to 400 within the space of 2 weeks. And this past game week, I managed to move from like 460 to 430 or something like that over there. So it's been, again, I suppose similar to you, is not after falling back so badly, very little progress on this last game week as well. And one of the reasons that's why I think so is because when you get in a new player these days, seemingly, and they're so-called differential in your team, the template seems to catch up so quickly. Within 2 or 3 game weeks, they're no longer differentials. If anything, they become rank shields or even spies, when you look at that FPL Gameweek website, And I think that's motivation for me to make sure that I look at those models that you produce, because I need to make sure that I get onto these differentials early, because I think one of the reasons is it's probably only 2 or 3 players every week that I can rely on to really boost my ranking. The rest of them are all just, they're basically dead players in my team.
Yeah, they're almost protection. They're guys that you have to have. You can't go without. But at the same time, you need those 2, 3, 4 players that are differentials, but also differentials not because you're just picking them for the sake of being differentials, but because you believe they're the best picks.
They can actually score, yes, and I think that's the difference. It's like I can use a few examples from this season. Ben Chilwell was like 7% owned going into game week 8. Within weeks, he was like 12, 13, 14. I think within 1 game week, he went up to like 13% ownership after the Norwich game. Raul Jimenez, I got him in like at 6% ownership, and then he just shot up. And there's a few others like that as well, where it's almost like if you're an early adopter, great, you get the early points, but then after that over there, it's worth nothing to you anymore. So I think this is a season where you need to really keep an eye out for these potential differential picks and get onto them early, because when I look at teams on social media as well, most of it has like the same 8 players or so. Look, Twitter especially is not a great indication, because there's just such a small subset of people, and it's always also a lot of groupthink on there as well, But I still do believe that, especially with if you look at the top 10k, top 20k, I mean, even in where my rank is at the moment, I think I probably had like 2 or 3 players with stars next to their names. And I mean, I really don't want to go into a game week relying on Adam Armstrong to get me points.
Yeah, I mean, can you believe my stars last week were Gundogan, Foden, and Wilson? I mean,
well, when it's working for you, it's just working for you, right?
but I mean, I reckon those are like, in my model, those are 3 of the top players in the entire in all the players that you can select from. and there they were as differentials. I couldn't believe my eyes when I opened up the page.
No, definitely. And I must admit, when I saw you had Foden and Gundogan in your team, man, I felt a bit of jealousy there as well. Because it's like, just because of the fact that I would have loved to get, okay, well, I had Foden in a few weeks ago, but then he got injured, and he missed a few games, or he played half of one of the games as well. So look, understandably, a few of us transferred him out, but I've always had other transfers to do, which is why I couldn't get one of those City midfielders back in, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
So I really want some of these differentials in my team, because right now I can think of like Salah as a dead player in the game, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Jota, James, Cancelo, all of those guys over there, they're not helping at all at the moment. Yeah,
but you can't afford not to have them.
But you can't afford not to have them. I mean, I don't want to bet against those players, but it's my fringe players that I need to kind of get right now, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, we've got some good differentials to chat about.
Nice.
I've got some juicy ones on the list, and I think possibly one or two that I haven't seen mentioned anywhere. So yeah, let's maybe we go through the team, and then we can start talking about those juicy ones that may or may not be in there.
Right, brilliant. So what formation so right now, obviously we're doing game week 16, 17 and 18 like a combined type of dream team, right? Because the turnaround times are so quick between the games that we're really not going to be able to record one episode every week and make those deadlines, right? So yeah, what formation do you think is the best one during these 3 game weeks?
Well, I actually ran the model for 10 weeks essentially with transfers. So this would be the team that you'd select and then be able to make your sort of standard transfer every week.
Okay.
And yeah, the model liked a 4-4-2.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So right now I'm gonna play this guessing game again, which we always do, but the defense, right?
Yes.
So it's going to be Trent in there. We're gonna have Cancelo. And now we don't have Chilwell anymore because he's injured, so we're definitely going to have James, right? So who's the next one? Alonso.
So you are 100% right all the way up to Alonso. Alonso is a bit of an injury dart at the moment. He had some back issues. He should be fine for the weekend, but I think there's also seems to be some slight doubt as to whether he's going to be nailed on and playing every game. There's been a lot of talk about possible rotation, and I didn't really buy into it, but he hasn't had the best couple games. I don't know if you've watched any of the Chelsea.
Yeah, it's almost like the Chelsea's current run of form has coincided with Chilwell getting injured.
Exactly, and Alonso hasn't looked fantastic, which is unfortunate because I mean I was so excited to get him into my team, and especially after the first 7 game weeks where I was kicking myself that I didn't have him in from the beginning.
And he's one of my differentials at the moment as well. So it was like I'm kind of like hoping he does well, or if like they get a goalless draw because you're going up against us in the title race as well. So I can deal with that, or a score draw where Alonso gets the goal or something like that over there.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, no, it hasn't worked out great so far. And the other interesting thing is like, what are the chances where like 3 game weeks in a row now where Liverpool are the only ones who have kept a clean sheet during that run, or 2 clean sheets. Chelsea, nothing. City, nothing, if I remember correctly. So, wow, that was really surprising because, I mean, that defense looks star-studded. And especially for us who have so many of them as well. Wow, it's just been quite... that's why our scores are so low.
Yeah, I think we got a little bit spoilt in the beginning of the season because you've got to remember, even like the best possible fixtures that you can have, clean sheet percentages, they range from, if you're looking at like City and Chelsea playing the weakest teams, you're lucky if it's between 50 and 60%. So even though you've got these amazing fixtures, the clean sheets will only happen half the time. And we've just seemed to be having clean sheet after clean sheet, as we've been going. So I think it's sort of catching up that clean sheets actually aren't so easy. But the attacking potential of those guys is just, it's too good not to.
And I suppose that's why we have them in there anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so
there's a storm happening behind me, by the way. I'm sure So if anybody is listening and wondering, well, what the hell's going on, there's a thunderstorm behind, outside at the moment. So yeah, I'm not banging anything in anger at the moment, right? So so who was that last defender, by the way? Did you say it? I didn't get it.
No, so the last one's actually, so instead of Alonso, the model actually prefers Rudiger now, just because more nailed on, and also Rudiger's been pretty decent when it comes to attacking potential this season.
Yeah, and he's playing box to box.
Yeah.
Box to box defender. Wow. Who would have thought? Look, Rudiger's been also an interesting one again. I know he has the potential to go big, but at the moment it's like when I'm transferring players in like that over there, I just feel so uninspired because I know they're not contributing anything in terms of giving me that offering me possible big gains, So yeah, but look, it's not a defense that I'll want to bet again, bet against anyway. No. So yeah.
And look, Alonso makes the bench, so he makes up the fifth defender on the bench. So you can see the clear, like the Chelsea defense is still hugely favoured.
Yeah, they're still on top. Yeah,
along with City. I mean, we didn't mention in goals, of course, Edison from City. So
yes, and he was our dream team pick last week as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's basically the model's just going for solid picks at the back who are going to play consistently. It loves the 3 Chelsea players and then it even goes with 2 City players over picking some of their midfielders.
Wow, that's interesting because there's a few City midfield options emerging now as well. Yeah. We saw one particular bandwagon now with Bernardo Silva, whose ownership has gone from like 13% right up to 20% within the space of like 3 days over last weekend. So that was quite impressive, but it just shows how quickly a bandwagon, and that was exactly what I was speaking about in terms of the, I was talking about 2 or 3 game weeks in terms of the template catching up. Yeah, it caught up with you within 1 game week. So yeah, that's quite interesting. So yeah, look, I don't think there's any surprises with the in terms of the defensive or the goalkeeping picks over there as well, because if you look at those teams, they're still by far the best in terms of expected goals conceded, and it's, well, actually now come to think of it, in terms of XGC, Crystal Palace has just overtaken Chelsea this past weekend, so they are now third, but just marginally ahead in terms of expected goals conceded. They're the third lowest now, but City are still number 1, only 9.59 expected goals conceded, and they've conceded 9. So it's not like they're underperforming, it's on par in terms of defensive performances. So they're producing by far the best numbers in terms of that, I suppose. Now, obviously not attacking numbers, but defensive numbers.
So it's interesting you mentioned Crystal Palace, because one of the spicy differential picks that I was going to bring up later is actually I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but Mark Gui. The defender?
Yes, Gui, yeah. I've seen, so he's interesting, and he's 4.5 million as well, if I remember correctly.
He's 4.5 million, and he's right up there in the model at the moment, and he's by far the cheapest, the best cheap defensive option. There's nothing below premium price when it comes to defenders. He's right top of the list. So I think, and I haven't seen him mentioned anywhere else, to be honest. I think he's certainly one to keep your eye on. He seems to be getting attacking returns, clean sheets. He's scored how many goals? He scored 2 goals already this season. I think he's for sure someone that you should be considering bringing in if you're looking for a cheaper defensive option. Certainly better than a Livramento or a Duffy or any of those guys that are in similar price brackets at the moment.
Now you speaking about this guy, and funny enough, Gueye comes from Chelsea as well. Another player who comes from Chelsea, and now playing for Brighton is Tarik Lambty. Now,
yes,
he's very exciting. He's always so far up in terms of where he's positioning and so on. And they 5th for expected goals conceded. They've had a poor run of form recently anyway. But we're hoping for some type of normalization. But Brighton are hit with COVID at the moment as well. Now, but where does Lambty fit in? Because I see Lambty, it's like Lambty, once he got fit, people didn't hesitate. They jumped onto him immediately. But like you're saying, the model doesn't back that up. So where does Lambty fit in those rankings?
So Lamptey's stats are pretty good, but the big thing hurting him in the model is just his game time at the moment.
Right.
So his sort of expected start at the moment is only about 80%. He's making a lot of sub appearances, and which is probably the worst thing for an FPL team when you've got a player that comes off the bench and actually plays. Whereas a player that gets benched and stays there is far better for your FPL team.
Yeah, you don't get these one-pointers happening and then
exactly, and you get to use your bench, which we spoke about how important that is over this period. So because of that, his numbers have actually been hurt quite a bit. So he's way down, not even in the top 100 at the moment. I think mostly based on that expected start, and I think until he's fully fit and playing consistently without any rests and any appearances off the bench, I don't think that's likely to change.
Okay, interesting. And now for our midfielder, so let's just rule Salah out. We know we're not going to talk about him. He's going to be there.
Put the armband on him and just move on.
Right. So nothing changes over there, right? So you said 4-4-2, so you got 3 more to go. So which is the other 3? So
the other 2 obvious ones, Jota at the moment with Firmino out. His stats have actually slightly overtaken Mane's, to the point that the model prefers him in the near term.
Yeah, well, how he didn't score against Wolves the other day, I'll never understand that. But anyway,
it's got to be the worst. Got to be the worst miss I've ever seen, because these guys that have these tap ins on the line, at least there's still some difficulty of actually just controlling the ball, whereas all he had to do was literally just pick his spot, and he couldn't do it.
Maybe that's what it is when you have time to think.
Too much time.
You just need instinct. Yeah. Okay. So
Jota, Gundogan from City. He's got by far the best stats of any City player, surprisingly, and his game time is a lot more assured than a guy like Foden. I think it's certainly Gundogan is actually the number 1 City guy to have in at the moment.
So let's talk about this more now, because I spoke about the Bernardo bandwagon just now, right? So we can see that everybody, look, I understand that Bernardo's been putting up actual numbers. I don't doubt that over there, but still, I mean, the question is now, how long can Bernardo sustain that level of output with those numbers?
Yeah, for me, it's not sustainable. His numbers compared to Foden, Grealish, or Gundogan are just nowhere close. So for me, I think it's you call it you may as well call it the banana bandwagon, because I don't see it lasting. He may continue to surprise us, but when you actually look deep down at the numbers and what the expected the XGI involvement is for all of these players, he's right at the bottom of the list. So at the moment, he's the one converting those chances, but I think that's just variance more than anything else.
Yeah, exactly. I still, whenever I've seen Bernardo Silva, I think he's an amazing player, but I've never been convinced about him as an FPL asset, because it's like he's one of those players I feel like he's capable of maybe getting like a purple patch, but after that over there, it's like it goes dead, and then he'll get you 2 points or 3 points or whatever, and he might not even be playing soon. He'll have a chance, his turn to be out of the team for a little bit of time as well. I don't know if that will happen, but it's City now, right? But yeah, so that's why I find your choice here in the dream team quite an interesting one. And for me, the big thing is a differential, and I won't stop talking about that there, because that's a big thing for me right now. I'm tired of having my players score me like 50 or 60 points, and I'm getting a grey dot basically every week,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah.
So yeah, moving on, and then the player that's really, gone from sort of mid model all the way to the top 10. He's actually in 8th place overall now. Is Bowen from West Ham. So he makes up the 4th midfield spot, and for me, it's 6.4 million. He's got to be the next differential for sure to jump on. His ownership, I think, is below 5%. I think it's around 4% or something.
Yeah.
And it's 4.2%. Fantastic fixtures coming up. Amazing numbers he's producing. I'd say this is the guy. If you're looking for any transfer this week, this should be the guy that should be the top of your list.
Wow, that's an amazing pick as well, because I was just looking at a few players, and he was one of them I was looking at. Obviously, Gundogan, Foden. And there's one or two other names popping up as well. Like you mentioned Mason Mount. I think he was in our dream team last week. But he's there's a few players knocking about there in that similar price bracket that I was looking at. And Bowen was the one looking at those fixtures that are coming up for West Ham now as well. He's really, really one that I think that, especially at that price, he's worth it as a punt as well.
Yeah, I don't think you can go wrong. I mean, West Ham's fixtures pretty much for the next 10. They don't have a tough game. So I would be very, very happy to have a guy, especially over this period when there's so much rotation.
And they're scoring in the tough games as well.
Yeah,
Liverpool, Chelsea. So
he can score massive points for you, and he costs 6 million. I mean, it's just an absolute no-brainer. Strengthen that squad of yours. I mean, this week I'm most likely taking Brownhill out and bringing Bowen in. I mean, what a dream transfer! It just strengthens my whole squad completely.
From bench fodder to a starting 11 point scorer. That's amazing. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, and then 2 strikers. Who are they?
2 strikers are the 2 guys that perhaps some of you would sort of expect, but obviously Cristiano Ronaldo with his. We've been speaking about it probably the whole season. Gameweek 16 Man United fixture swing.
We finally got you, actually.
And we finally got you, and it feels a bit weird because United have been so bad that people stopped talking about it. But I think Ronaldo, he's shown that he can score points, and especially against these weaker teams. They've got a fantastic run for the next 10. It's just a question of whether you want to spend that kind of budget for a player like him.
Yeah, it's so tempting, but because of the issue, and I suppose just now we'll, once we've done talking about the squad, we'll speak a little bit about COVID and stuff like that over there. But especially with the festive fixture run coming up now, with the risk of rotation and the COVID absences and so on, I just feel like it's so important to have a squad, a stronger squad. And that's why I'm struggling to figure out where I'll fit in. Like, that's why I'm considering even getting rid of Son from my team, because I feel like I could spread that out over 2 positions and then have a stronger bench and a stronger starting 11 as well. Whereas right now, if I have 1 or 2 of those absences, then I'm relying on Livramento and Armstrong, and I really don't want that to be the case. And then I got Jacob Ramsey as my third. My third bench option, which again, he's effectively bench fodder, So So, but look, still considering those fixtures of Manchester United, it's so amazing. Over the next, I think 9 game weeks, 10 game weeks, where something like Ronaldo could really, really be a points machine from now till then.
Yeah, I think he will score points, but I think. I have run obviously the sim through the model that takes all of that into account and takes the ups the bench weighting a little bit for this festive period, and the model doesn't choose Ronaldo. It goes for a much more balanced and stronger bench.
Yeah.
And I think that's just because with so much, such a high likelihood of your first or second bench player being used in a lot of these games, that with Ronaldo you just don't, you're going to have absolutely, sort of bench fodder sitting there waiting to come on, and I think it's going to be a much better play for your team overall to pick some of these cheaper West Ham players who are scoring huge amounts of points, rather than putting all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm leaning to as well. Look, I'm not, again, I'm not saying Ronaldo is not a good pick. I'm just trying to think of it in terms of, if I have, like, say, Ronaldo, like you have Ronaldo and Brownhill versus a combination of Gundogan and Bowen, which is more or less similar price, I would say. Then, you have to ask, who do you think is going to score more? And I think we know the answer to that, right? I mean, yes, Ronaldo will score a lot of points on his own, but in terms of combinations, naturally you'll think a combination of like Gundogan and Foden, or Gundogan and even Mount or Bowen. I think those guys are going to score more. So yeah, and then your last forward, who's he?
So yeah, the final forward is Jamie Vardy. You just can't get rid of him. He continues to score. Continues to score big points. He's right up there in the model, and I think Leicester have looked terrible at the back, but they're looking good.
I carry the scars of it, but the only thing,
the only thing I will say is that this afternoon, obviously, there's been quite a bit of news on Spurs assets and COVID. I think there are like 9 players and 2 coaches that have potentially tested positive for COVID, and the ramifications of that are that Spurs fixture this weekend is likely to get called off against Brighton, and it's also just as likely that their game week 17 fixture will also be called off, and that's against Leicester. So if that's the case, then I wouldn't be bringing Vardy in. Because you just don't want to bring a player that potentially got a blank game week in 2 weeks' time.
As well, yeah. And quite interesting about that is that Brighton also have about four or five players out with COVID as well. So if it kind of makes sense. Now Spurs playing Brighton this weekend, if it gets called off, it might work out in favor of both teams anyway. So that will be quite interesting.
So just avoid those players in general, I'd say. And this is what can happen. Again, we must just remind you that this is what can happen over this festive period. Is that with this Omicron variant, we could see some games getting cancelled and.
What's interesting about this now, we spoke about it earlier in the season, and I told you, it was actually during our first recording when you said you have the strategy of picking one player per team for attack and then treat defense separately. And that works out so nice in these situations, where if you do have a game called off, you don't have the whole heart of your team ripped out, if that makes sense, Now, but if you look at our teams, as form dictated, I suppose, we started moving to double and triple on certain teams and so on, and now we're also running the risk of that happening to us as well, where if that game gets called off, you could potentially have 3, 4, even 5 players missing in a game week.
Yeah, it's difficult this season just because there seem to be a lack of options, especially from the midfield. Everything's coming from Liverpool, City. United just they don't have any options for us at the moment, and everyone else is just so far behind. Chelsea, the problem with Chelsea is just the crazy rotation that they're having, that even a guy like Mount is playing less than 4 out of 5 games. So it's very difficult to find these guys and with the value in Jota and Gundogan and I guess now some of the West Ham players, I think these double ups, this might be the season where those double ups are you're just sort of going to be forced into it. But COVID can definitely wreak some sort of havoc to your team, if there are some games called off.
On the other hand, considering that I was complaining about players who effectively are rank shield, if they do get called off, we all suffer together because it's so heavily template. Maybe it's not such a high impact on our teams. But if that is the case and you do have bench options, then that could effectively be what is your differential as well. So that's something for all of us to think about as well.
Yeah, you could find yourself making huge gains just with some decent players that come off the bench. Yeah,
exactly. And then and talking about the bench, you mentioned that Alonso was on the bench because that was my defensive pick, right? So who makes up the rest of the bench?
So Antonio is obviously with the fixture swing.
Fair enough, no surprises there, I suppose.
Yeah, he's been quite shocking lately, but I think with the new fixtures, I think he's one to certainly have there.
Yeah.
Son was it was a pick before the COVID news came out. So assuming the COVID news, then I wouldn't go Son.
Yeah, he might have to move out of my team anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And lastly was Ramsdale as the backup keeper. He's still the best value keeper in terms of second to basically only the premium options.
Interesting stuff. So that sounds amazing, man. It looks like definitely on paper it looks logically like the team that should go and get you 100 points per week, but we know we've been getting 40 or 50 instead.
On paper it looks pretty cool when you see all the team together. You're like, wow, I wish this could be my team in FPL.
I'm killing it this week. When I saw my team last week and I saw 3 Liverpool players versus Wolves, and then was it 2 Chelsea players versus Watford? Who was it? It was Palace. But either way, whatever it was, I'm thinking, wow, I could be in for a big week over here, and it never came throughout these whole 3 weeks. So, yeah, I suppose we should lower expectations. Yeah, and then now let's talk about some differentials and which way that we'll put on our watch list, because obviously, you will want to make some transfers. We've spoken about the likes of Gundogan, Foden, and so on. Gundogan's in our dream team. Foden, I suppose, will be one to look out for if you want to make a transfer going into game week 17 or game week 18. He becomes an option. There's also, like I say, I'm assuming you will. Most of us have Antonio, so maybe Bowen will be the one that you want to do transfer to in one of those over there. But we were talking before we started recording, and you mentioned a few interesting names. So you want to kick that off with a few differential picks and possible transfers in? Yeah.
Sure. I'm going to start with the one that I just have to mention him because no one has him, but he's still in the top 3 of players, and that's Sadio Mane. If you are stuck with someone like Son or Kane and you've got the funds and you don't have 3 Liverpool players, honestly, Mane is a really, really good pick. So he's less than 5% owned, and he's someone who could make you jump massivly in rank if he has a good week.
Because he's got 4% ownership or something like
exactly.
that.
So if you're spending the funds on a guy like Kane, trust me, Mane is a way better pick, and the numbers. Kane is nowhere close to his numbers.
Interesting. Well, look, we knew that. I think we fans, we've spoken about it. In fact, you mentioned not having 3 Liverpool players and having the budget to go to a 12 million player. That's basically a unicorn. Nobody has that.
It's very difficult. It's very, very difficult. That's why I said there are a lot of caveats to that. But anyway. Okay, so in terms of other great differentials, if you're not going to go Bowen or you just can't afford him, I think Pablo Fornals is by far the next best.
How much is Pablo Fornals?
He's 6 million, whereas Bowen is 6.4.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, that makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, so if you're just short, I think Fornals is for sure the next best option. And then Josh King from Watford, if you're looking for a cheap forward. King is really showing good numbers as well. He's up there and he's 5.7 million.
So you didn't mention Emmanuel Dennis, and I'm assuming that's got to do with the fact that he's jumped from 5.3 to 5.7 within the space of a week, and now he's 20 or 30% owned or something like that.
Well, it's crazy that he's the one who's getting bought because maybe it's because he's the one who's been converting, but King's numbers are way better. He's on penalties. King is the guy. go King, don't go Dennis. I think that would be my biggest tip when it comes to that.
Yeah, especially when you start going against I suppose we did it with Bernardo just now, but when you start going against the player or betting against the player who's actually producing the actual numbers, we're becoming controversial now, Greg. So.
I'm just following the stats, man.
Yeah,
and then Ollie Watkins.
I brought him in last week. So,
I think he's still going to be a fantastic pick. I think for sure someone that you should be looking at.
Just not this week. He must calm down against Liverpool this weekend. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So just maybe put him on the back burner for next week. He's looking good. We spoke about Gui in defense. I think he's definitely the best cheap defensive option at the moment. And then Konsa had a fantastic week last week, and it might be a bit late to the party on that, but he's also up there in terms of his numbers. So some guys to consider there.
Interesting. That's brilliant. So look, it's going to be quite an interesting time now. I think, especially with the games turning around so quickly, and with the you've got the festive fixtures where 4 game weeks in 10 days or something crazy like that over there. So look, we'll come back in another 2 weeks time after these 3 game weeks are done, and so that will be around the 20th where we'll release another episode for the next 3 game weeks, taking us into the new year. So and then we'll be would have crossed the halfway mark for the season as well. And I think very summary, even if you don't want to listen to any of what we said earlier, start getting some differentials and keep your brain strong, and you should be sorted for the next at least for the next few weeks, because things change so fast. So look, Greg, that was awesome. So we'll catch up in 2 weeks.
Sounds good. All the best, Clyde. Good luck out there.
Cheers everyone. Keep safe, especially over the festive season. And we'll catch you in 2 weeks time. Cheers everyone.